You're listening to a Roddenberry podcast.
Mission Log, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast, episode 569, Child's Play.
Welcome into another episode of Mission Log, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. I'm John Champion.
And I'm Earl Green, sitting in for the mighty Norman Lau. Each week on Mission Log, we run a background check on a newly adopted episode of Star Trek, seeing what morals, meanings, and messages we can glean from the records.
This week, Child's Play, the one where Icheb gets to go home again. He'll have his own room, get to play sports, and have a rewarding career in agricultural genetics. Just don't ask about the part of being engineered as a bioweapon. Oh, family. Earl, welcome back.
I've changed a few diapers in my time. Every child is a bioweapon.
You speak from experience. I like that. That's why we need you here. Seriously, it is good to have you back. Norman is getting to the end of his off time with his procedure. We're very happy about that. Time now, though, for a few last guest hosts. And it's about time we had you back on the show.
Hey, I'm always ready to talk about something better than the fight.
Well, you got it this week. And I tell you what, if you out there know of an episode that you like better than the fight, might be all of them, why don't you send us an email or a message? Earl, why don't you tell folks where they can reach us?
Gladly. We would love to hear from you. Mission Log is a conversation about Star Trek. Find us on Facebook at Mission Log Pod and Threads at Roddenberry Podcasts. The conversation always continues, and I do mean always, in the Mission Log Discord, with near-daily live events and 24/7 chat about the topics you love. Get your invitation to our private server by joining patreon.com/missionlog. While you're at it, one of the most important ways to help the podcast you love is to leave a 5-star rating and review at Apple or your favorite podcast platform. And always remember, your comments could be used on the show. And now, here's John Champion with this week's trivia.
Why, thank you for that. All right, it's time to get into Child's Play. We have a story by Paul Brown, and here is a brand new name for us in the Star Trek franchise. Paul had worked primarily at this point in his career as a writer and producer on shows like Quantum Leap and The X-Files, with a little excursion over to Pacific Blue. He just had this one credit on Voyager, but he'll be back for another turn on Star Trek when we catch him again on Enterprise. We have a teleplay credited to Ralph Green. And it wasn't that long ago that Raf's name first appeared in the Voyager credits. We've covered his one other credit thus far when he contributed to the story for Virtuoso. And as a staff writer, we will see his name in the credits again right up until the end of the series. This was directed by Mike Vehar, and speaking of familiar names, we've just covered Mike's most recent Voyager outing with Sunkatse, and he's got a significant number of episodes yet to come. Then he will make the jump as well over to Enterprise. Let's talk about our guest stars. Okay, our Borg kids are well established at this point, so they are all back, along with another guest shot from Scarlett Palmer's as Naomi Wildman. But this week, we meet a couple of other significant characters when we go to Icheb's homeworld and meet his parents, Ife and Lucan, played by Tracy Ellis and Mark A. Shepard, respectively. Tracy's on-screen career only covers about 14 years, but she made a lot of TV appearances in that time. She shows up on The Larry Sanders Show, ER, and more. She made 2 appearances as different characters on The X-Files, and she even made it to some iconic feature films like The Age of Innocence and The Last of the Mohicans. There is an oddity in her acting resume, one of which I am anxious to learn more about. In 1997, she appeared in a film set to Freddie Mercury's posthumous album with Queen, Made in Heaven. At the time, different filmmakers and actors collaborated to create new visuals for 8 of the album's tracks, wholly different from the official music videos. So if anyone out there has a lead on that, please let me know. Finally, Mark A. Shepard, not to be confused with Mark Allen Shepard, who played Morn on DS9. No. This Mark is English, and he's probably pretty recognizable to you from a number of other projects. He was Romo on the Ron Moore Battlestar Galactica. He spent a long time on Supernatural as Crowley. He made 2 appearances on the short-lived Firefly, and if his impressive resume isn't enough to take in, he is also one of only those few actors who turns up in both Star Trek and Doctor Who. Oh, you want me to name-check one of those actors? How about W. Morgan Shepard, who also happens to be Mark's father, and on more than one occasion, Mark has stepped in to play the younger version of a character first played by his father. See The Impossible Astronaut, Broken Bird, or a 2010 version of Jules Verne's Mysterious Island, in which the Shepards play both old and young Captains Nemo. By the way, a movie that also happened to be directed by Mark Shepard.
Welcome to the Delta Quadrant. Want to add a Borg kid's biological distinctiveness to your household? You're in luck. Voyager's an adoption agency this week.
Prologue. It's science fair time aboard Voyager, and all the child actors we can afford are in attendance. The newly rescued Borg twins show off their experiment to clone a potato. When Janeway asks what's up with the space spuds, Seven explains that she had to talk Rebby and Azan down from their original proposal, which was to clone Naomi. Still, the captain is impressed. Next up, Mazati's enclosed ant farm full of bioluminescent insects. Janeway offers praise, but notes that the ant farm is still a cube-shaped container full of drones and queens. In her defense, Seven says Mazati is still unpacking her newly minted individuality. Naomi Wildman has created a physical model of her father's home planet with animated holographic overlays of its active weather patterns. If you're expecting someone to cobble together a simple poster board display, you're out of luck, because last up is Icheb, who has assembled a high-resolution gravimetric sensor array to scan for the neutrino flux associated with wormholes. Janeway, B'Elanna, and Chakotay are wowed. This is a science project that might help get Voyager home faster. As B'Elanna and Chakotay crowd around Icheb to ask questions, Janeway pulls Seven aside for a chat. Seven shows no small amount of pride in the progress Icheb has made since regaining his individuality, and talks about his hopes to earn a permanent posting in astrometrics. But Janeway has news that makes that a bit less likely. Icheb's parents have been located and contacted. Voyager is diverting its course to take him home. Seven's mouth says that's good news, but Seven's face says this news has landed on her like a sack of cloned space potatoes. Act 1. Astrometrics. Icheb is using the big screen workstation when Seven arrives, telling him he's been here an hour longer than he was scheduled. He needs to let the grown-ups use astrometrics too. But before he calls it a night, Icheb demonstrates to Seven that he has increased the range of Voyager's long-range sensors. Another impressive feat, and this one wasn't even entered in the science fair. Seven says she needs to tell Icheb something, but he is still romanticizing about how he feels like he can see the whole galaxy from astrometrics. Oh, sorry, what did you want to tell me, Seven? But Seven just tells him it's time to regenerate. Seven then drops by the captain's quarters for a visit to discuss what Seven calls Icheb's reassimilation. Could we maybe phrase that more in terms of reuniting a family, Seven? Somewhere between the choice of words and the body language, it emerges that Seven hasn't broken the news to the person it would matter to the most. Despite the fact that Seven says her feelings are irrelevant, Janeway says they're obviously not. But she has faith in Seven to handle this. After all, she has already helped Icheb through one difficult transition. In the cargo bay, Seven finds the Borg kids regenerating, except for Icheb, who is using the computer console to calculate neutrino trajectories, the 24th century equivalent of being caught reading a book under the covers with a flashlight. But hey, before you go to sleep, Icheb, we found your folks, and we're headed that way to drop you off. Well, there's some news that would help anyone get to sleep. Icheb asks, do I have to stay with them? I don't even remember them. Seven points out that she never saw her parents again after being assimilated, so Icheb is lucky to have this chance to reconnect with his family. She'll be fine. The younger ex-Borg will be fine. and Icheb will be fine. Really. Well, that went well. Voyager arrives at the Brunali homeworld, finding a planet whose surface shows numerous signs of past visits from the Borg. Not surprising, since there's a Borg transwarp conduit less than a light year away. As Janeway orders Tuvok to maintain a heightened alert for Borg activity, Icheb is getting a last checkup from the doctor in sickbay. He has a digestive complaint, which the doctor diagnoses as a case of butterflies, a perfectly normal reaction to nervousness. The hologram and the ex-Borg start to have a heart-to-heart talk about the importance, or lack thereof, of parents. But before they can get very far, Seven arrives. It's time to go. On the surface of the planet, there's evidence of an advanced society laid to waste. The Brunali have abandoned the modern buildings that would mark them out as technologically advanced, trying to live under the radar as an agrarian society of no further interest to the Borg. Captain Janeway, Tuvok, Seven, and Icheb beam down and meet Icheb's father, Lucan, and his mother, Yifei. They're stunned at how much he's grown. Seven's mention of Icheb having spent time in a Borg maturation chamber is perhaps not the most helpful conversational icebreaker. Seven explains that she too was liberated from the Borg. Having gotten a look at his own people and his home, Icheb says the 8 little words that neither his family nor his crewmates expect. I would like to return to Voyager now. Act 2. Okay, let's try this again. Janeway invites Lucan and Yifei to Voyager to try to pregame this whole thing a bit better. But Seven dives right in. She has doubts about the Brunali being able to deal with Icheb's special medical needs as a former drone. And what about his interest in astrophysics? When Seven turns to the topic of whether or not the Brunali can even defend themselves from the Borg, the mood turns icy. As the discussion rolls downhill, Captain Janeway casually invites Seven to wait for her in the captain's ready room. Now. That's Starfleet for go to the principal's office. Janeway apologizes to Icheb's parents, asking them to stay aboard Voyager so they can get reacquainted with him in friendly surroundings. In her ready room, Janeway unloads on Seven. It's not that her concerns aren't valid, but there is this thing called tact. But Seven stands her ground. The Brunali are stubbornly staying put in a place that's been attacked by the Borg multiple times. They should relocate to a more defensible planet. But Janeway argues that the decision is not Seven's to make. Seven counters by saying anyone who values their own goals over the safety of their children is irresponsible. Janeway pointedly asks Seven if that applies to Icheb's parents, or perhaps to the Hansons. Seven simply replies, both. Now, that's not the answer Janeway was expecting. She slows her roll just a little bit, gently telling Seven that Icheb has to be able to make his own choices. Icheb is back in the cargo bay, being peppered with questions from Mazati. Is his mother pretty? What are his parents like? But Icheb is not feeling chatty. Naomi, playing Kadiskat with the twins, mentions that she's never met her father. Icheb's starting to get cranky with the constant stream of questions, so Seven shows up to get him away from it all, to go have dinner with his parents. Icheb says he has nothing to say to them. Seven replies, then it will be a very quiet dinner. But one way or the other, he is going. Seven escorts him to his dinner date with his folks, but then retreats to another corner of the mess hall to hover from afar. Yifei introduces Icheb to some homemade poma, his favorite dish when he was little. He is aggressively uninterested, but Lucan finally does a dad thing and says, hey, your mom worked hard on that, give it a try. Which Icheb does, and it's pretty tasty. Lucan and Yifei smile. Icheb smiles. Neelix, standing near Seven, smiles. It's good to see the family back together, isn't it? Neelix asks. Seven, still processing her feelings about the reunion, leaves the mess hall without a word. Act 3. Icheb returns to his parents' planet, where Lucan is giving him the dime tour. Everything has been built by hand, sometimes using scavenged parts from shipwrecks. They can genetically resequence the local plant life to make it hardy enough to survive in the relative wasteland left behind by multiple Borg attacks. Icheb is curious about whether or not the Brunali have space travel, and Lucan says that in time that ability will return, but only if the young Brunali like Icheb stay close to home to ensure that it does. Seven beams down in the middle of this conversation to summon Icheb back to Voyager, but he tells her he's staying the night. Seven points out that he doesn't have the equipment to regenerate here, but Lucan pushes back. Why not give us that equipment now? Seven then asks Lucan to return to Voyager with her to retrieve it. As Seven runs Lucan through the basics of the portable regeneration unit, good for one night's sleep, Lucan comments that the Brunali will have to work out how to recharge it. That's only if Icheb decides to stay, Seven says. Okay, let's have the real talk. Lucan is grateful for everything Seven has done for Icheb. He's grateful that he even gets to see his son again. He reminisces about Icheb wandering away from home to look at a new Brunali fertilization array on the planet's surface, a piece of technology that also caught the collective eye of the Borg and resulted in another attack, during which Icheb was taken and assimilated. Yeah, that sounds like him, all right, Seven muses. The boy has a mind of his own. She then relents a bit after this unexpected moment of bonding. That night, in his parents' home, Lucan points out some local asterisms to Icheb, and the conversation inevitably returns to Voyager and how returning home is important to that crew, just like having Icheb back home is important to Ife and Lucan. In the morning, Icheb returns to Voyager a bit late. He missed morning classes with the other children, but he breaks the news to Seven. His home is with the Brunali. He has a responsibility to help them rebuild it. Seven puts her best face on it, but quickly excuses herself to inform Captain Janeway, and she points out that Icheb should tell the other ex-Borg kids. In the transporter room, Icheb's got his bags packed, but Seven has more stuff for him, a number of pads to help him further his science studies, and a telescope. Icheb thanks Captain Janeway and exchanges a look with Seven before he is beamed off the ship. Act 4. Seven is awakened by the pitter-patter of little former Borg feet. Mazzotti has come out of her regeneration cycle early, or, to put it simply, she can't sleep. She misses Icheb already. Seven admits that she does too, but they will all adapt to his absence. Mazzotti asks Seven what will happen if the Borg return to attack the Brunali again. Seven says that at the Brunali's current level of technology, that is unlikely to happen. But Mazzotti asks what if he's on a ship, like he was the last time he was taken? Seven says Mazzotti's got it wrong. Icheb's father says he was taken from the planet's surface. But Mazzotti has the receipts, and now Seven has doubts that won't let her sleep. Seven summons the captain to astrometrics. Janeway, powered solely by coffee, walks in, saying this better be important. Seven assures her that it is definitely important enough for that. Wow, is it really 3 a.m? Wake-up call. Tactical data Seven recovered from the children's Borg cube indicates that Mazzotti was right about where Icheb was assimilated, and more to the point, that Lucan was lying. Furthermore, the record of the Borg's visits to the Brunali planet show there was no attack 4 years ago. Seven wants to return and ask Icheb's parents some questions, but Janeway isn't convinced. Have they not been through enough? And is Seven perhaps trying to find ways to hit the undo button on this whole thing out of her own sense of emotional attachment? Seven doesn't deny that she is emotionally unsettled by Icheb's departure, but she points out in logic that Janeway can't ignore. They have a responsibility to ensure Icheb's being left in a safe situation. If Seven doesn't do that, she is no better than her own parents. By a staggering coincidence, at about the same time, Lucan is asking Ife if Icheb hasn't been through enough. Okay, let's rewind a little bit. Icheb's parents are having an argument about going through with it, whatever it is. Lucan says there's no reason to do it. Ife says this is what Icheb was born for. He is no ordinary child, and his return represents an unmissable opportunity. Lucan argues that Icheb is bright, and his knowledge and experience could help the Brunali. But more to the point, Lucan doesn't want to lose the boy a second time. But Ife points out it was her husband who taught her the sacrifices have to be made. That's when Icheb walks in, having joined the other young Brunali for some sports. Hello, Mother. Hello, Father. Why the fighting? What's the bother? Ife asks Icheb to sit down as she tells him that he is very important to them. As a single tear rolls down her face, she adds that what Icheb doesn't know is why he's important. With that, she retrieves a hypo spray and says, this'll only hurt a little bit. Lucan puts his son in a Sinkatsi-worthy headlock. Ife injects him, and Icheb is out like a light. Ife tells Lucan to prepare the launch. Act 5. Voyager resumes orbit over the Brunali's planet and hails Lucan and Ife. Captain Janeway and Seven say they'd like to ask some more questions. Some reasonable doubt has arisen over Lucan's story of how Icheb fell into the hands of the Borg. But the couple is evasive, especially when Janeway asks to speak to Icheb directly. The captain has Tuvok run a scan for Icheb's life signs, and it turns out he's not on the planet. Seven's scans find a Brunali ship with a 9 million kilometer head start, and it's emitting a false warp signature that would light up like a neon sign to the Borg as that ship heads toward the transwarp conduit. Ife says Icheb is fighting for his people, but Seven questions if he's doing it by choice. That's when Janeway puts it all together. The ship that assimilated Icheb was infected by a pathogen that wiped out nearly all of the Borg on board. That pathogen was genetically engineered by Icheb's parents, who did then what they've done now, put a child infected with that pathogen on a ship that the Borg will find irresistible. It's the only weapon they have left to save their civilization. Janeway's done talking to them, however, and orders a course to catch up with the Brunali ship. Once Voyager is closer, Icheb's life signs are detected on the Brunali ship, and he's unconscious. Worse yet, Tuvok has detected signs that a Borg ship will pop out of the transwarp conduit mere seconds from now, having fallen for the bait. Despite Tom's warnings that getting close enough to save Icheb will put Voyager in a very bad position when the Borg ship emerges, it's full speed ahead until Seven is able to beam the boy directly to sickbay. There's just one problem. Voyager is now caught in the same tractor beam that a Borg sphere is using to pull in the Brunali ship. Phasers are fired at the Borg ship to no effect. Seven has an idea. Beam a photon torpedo aboard the Brunali ship set to detonate once it's inside the Borg sphere. It works, but leaves a split second between being within kissing distance of an exploding Borg sphere and warping away from an exploding Borg sphere. But with Tom at the helm, Voyager gets away. Barely. In sickbay, the doctor delivers the results. Icheb was practically bred to be a weapon against the Borg. He will always be a carrier of the pathogen, though it can be suppressed so it's not a danger to the other ex-Borg children or to Seven. Physically, he'll be fine. Psychologically, Janeway knows Icheb will have to work through some stuff, and she knows just the person to help him do it. After all, Seven's maternal instincts just saved the boy's life. Later in Astrometrics, Icheb is comparing his genome to that of the typical Brunali male. He points out that the genetic manipulations his parents devised to make his body produce a Borg-fighting pathogen was an ingenious defense. Seven, however, has another word for it: barbaric. She is uncompromising in her judgment. Icheb's parents were in the wrong. He is not obliged to forgive them for what they did. He worries that they may not forgive him for living and thus letting them down. Maybe being reassimilated and destroying that Borg sphere was his destiny. But Seven says he has the right to choose his own destiny, just like he can choose to stay up late and keep studying genetics. The end.
Nicely done, Earl. Thanks for taking on the recap duties for Child's Play. No mention of Chucky during the recap, so you showed great restraint.
Somehow exhibited extraordinary self-restraint on that count. And, you know, sadly, that also means no Bride of Chucky, so no Jennifer Tilly.
I'm a big Jennifer Tilly fan, but all right. But I tell you what, I could not restrain myself from freeze-framing during the teaser segment to get a look at those cloned potatoes because I wasn't paying attention to it, but then they said the thing that they're cloned and I was like, wait a minute, let me go back. Are the little eyes, are the little divots exactly the same? Yes, they are.
Yeah, they are.
Yes. Good job, props department. Apparently those were auctioned off or something at some point. Yeah, they were. And
for how much?
Probably too much. But I am such a nerd, I had to go back and I had to look to see the banner behind the potatoes where you see this kind of like Elcar's, printed material. And yes, they are correctly identified as S. tuberosum. So they did indeed get the Latin name correct. Yeah, so good job. Again, don't let those twins talk too much. Just Seven's going to talk for you. I will come back to that in a moment. How many people on board participate in the science fair? Because we only saw the Borg kids. I kind of wanted Harry Kim to be there with his own, Just let him do something. Why not?
Yeah, Yeah, don't make him feel too much like he's at the bottom of the org chart. I mean, I know he kind of is, but come on, we don't have to hammer it.
We don't want to force it. Okay. What I do like, though, and we very often point out Voyager's poor memory about its own episodes, so it's very satisfying when you see character changes from week to week. And I know that we get some changes out of the kids, but it's really nice to see Seven a little bit different than she was last week by being a little more proud, a little more forgiving of the kids. So it's like baby steps, but it's there. Really nice to see.
You have to figure she has probably been the one person who has spent the most time around them.
Sure. Yeah.
Because we've got our own little Borg colony happening down in the cargo bay, which 2 seasons ago was terrifying, and now it's cute.
It would have been level 10 force fields all around.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Now, speaking of tech, I love Naomi's globe.
That is a cool prop/effect. Yes.
I am a big fan of animated infographics, and one of my favorite simple pleasures in life, and also because I'm in Tornado Alley, it's a necessity, is I have a desktop app that runs just about 24/7, showing the current weather conditions, but it's packaged in the form factor of the Weather Channel from 1992 or so. You kind of pixelate it. It's a little Sega
cool.
Genesis.
I love it. That's awesome.
It's always good in this part of the country to have a reliable, persistent weather app, and it might as well have an appearance that makes it a little bit comfort food, because sometimes the news it is delivering is not good.
Yeah. But, I could see the more kind of smart devices that we get, like a little dedicated thing like that, that's just a globe and has some projected animated material. That would be awesome. When we cut to Janeway in her quarters, she's got a fruit plate, so somehow the replicator did not burn that. So good job, Janeway. Really like the moment of the Doctor talking to Ichab about butterflies, because it's not just the fun of something that an adult would say to a kid, because, look, that is the bedside manner that we expect out of a doctor with a younger patient. But I love the Doctor's body language. You notice that when he takes the scanner, he just very quickly waves his hand over, Ichab's belly. It's good business. It was really nice to see.
That's a great conversation, by the way. This is in my notes, too. I feel like this scene totally puts the lie to the idea that the Doctor could not also be ship's counselor.
Yes. Oh, my gosh. Thank you. Yeah,
he's doing an excellent job here dealing with Ichab. And like you said, I love that little exchange. Oh, you have butterflies in your eye. I have not assimilated butterflies. And then I tried to think about the mechanics of that. It's like, what, you just pin one down?
Yeah, that's how it works.
Those things are bigger than the butterfly, man. It's not even worth assimilating them. I don't know why he even thought of that. But now I can't get the image out of my head.
Now, I know this episode can't be an hour and a half long. We've only got the constraints of commercial TV in 2001. But I feel like there is a scene missing, at least when Voyager decides, okay, we can contact the people on this planet, because, yes, they're a post-warp society, but we're kind of learning about them. How much technology do they have or not have? And somebody needs to find and reach out to Ichab's parents before we send Ichab down. So I'm very curious how that conversation went. I'm very curious what was learned, because in my head there is another scene missing, which is right before the away team beams down and somebody on that planet yells like, all right, everybody, they're coming, so just look totally cool and normal, and definitely do not act weird and suspicious. Just
Act
do
naturally.
that. Do that right now.
I have a feeling, John, that you're missing scenes like those YouTube videos of, the various ships of Star Trek broadcasting their own theme music while they're in orbit of the planets. But there's also a commercial break after the song plays that's like, have you seen your kids? We've got them.
That's it. That's it. Yeah.
Do you know where your children are?
It's 10 o'clock. Right?
Okay, a little bit of production talk here.
Yeah.
The tracking dolly shots on the bridge, really bumpy. Did you notice this? I mean, they were
Yeah, and that's the kind of thing that you pick up in Video Village when you're shooting. So they ran out of time? Yeah.
Don't they lay tracks down for that sort of thing?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Did no one spot this in the dailies say, oof, we might need to squeeze in a reshoot? It's not like going back out on location. The bridge is always right over there.
Yeah. And you can always just jump over to another angle. They probably did coverage and got a close-up of somebody else, and you could just, hide that dolly bump if that's your only good take. Yeah.
It just sticks out because we are used to better than this from Voyager, and I'm also used to better than this from Mike Vehar because I'm also a big fan of his work on Babylon 5, and it's just... That was an odd thing to leave in. So all I can figure out is, okay, maybe they did run out of time.
Yeah.
This question is such a can of worms. You think Naomi's mother is irrelevant to her? Oh, wait, Naomi's mother is on the ship?
I know.
Wait, next thing you're going to tell me Worf had a kid. What the hell?
We haven't seen her in a year. Yeah. As we go into the next act, I really like the scene in the conference room because Seven is just coming in hot. There is no talking her down. There is no artifice of diplomacy here at all. And it's just a fun scene to see played like that. And, hats off to the parents because they're dealing with this as best they can. I do wonder, the Borg kids, they've only been on board for 2 weeks. Right? They've spent way longer as their pre-Borg selves and as Borg than they have spent as children on Voyager. So it does seem like they're a bit attached to Voyager. I get it. This might be the best thing they've had so far. But they just seem to have completely forgotten about any lives before this moment. And look, I know that this will be central to our discussion in the next segment. Icheb, he may very well be able to make his own decision, but isn't he also still a child, and don't his parents honestly get the last word, at least at this point in understanding his story? Not talking about the reveal.
Yeah.
I'm kind of surprised that Janeway is even entertaining this with Seven, that Seven would just say, no, this upsets me, I want to keep him.
I'll feed him.
Right.
Can I keep the Borg kids? I'll feed them.
Right.
It's kind of weird because thinking about the process of them kind of jamming this family back together, if I were to go to the shelter and adopt a new cat, I would have to go through more scrutiny than Icheb's parents went through in this episode, at least that we see.
Yeah.
They have to come to your place and visit and, look for hazards, make sure you don't have potted plants that are deadly to cats or dogs or whatever. You have to go through more to get a pet than you have
that's very
drop
true.
Icheb off on this planet. So I have lots of questions.
Yeah. We do apparently let both of the twins have a line here at some point, but one of them has his back turned to the camera, so it may not have even been him. Don't really know, but we do have something that resembles both of the kids. If you use your imagination, both of the twins talked here. I really like the scene in the mess hall because food memories are powerful, at least they are for me. And it's a very good scene to see Icheb warm up to his parents. I do have a food note, though, and you knew that this was coming. Looking at their food, it sort of looks like little mashed potato volcanoes. And then those are kind of surrounded by cranberries. There's some sort of protein on the other side of the plate, but I was really focused on that.
I don't know. I'm sold. Sign me up for some Poma.
Okay. All right. It's Poma time when we're ready. I always love my location shots. Really nice use of location here. And big. It's not like we go to Bronson Canyon and it's like, okay, we have to cut off everything that resembles a road or a hiking trail or whatever. No, this is huge. And it's rare that we get to see our characters lit by sunlight, and there's a lot of it there. It's just good looking, you know?
Yeah, the map painting is integrated very well.
Yeah.
And, that map painting, giant crater walls, shades of best of both worlds right there.
Yeah.
But it's seamless with whatever this location was, some kind of quarry or something.
It looks like I was trying to find out exactly where, and you know what? I should actually, it won't be in time for the show, but I should actually go pull the call sheets from that and find out exactly where they were, because they made good use of that location.
Yeah, it had a live water feature, like a drainage pipe or something. That was...
Yeah. Added a little life to the whole thing. Yeah, nice. I really like this moment of dialogue with Icheb's parents, helping guide him, helping him to see the importance of home by using Voyager as the parallel. Because obviously there's more to be revealed about parents. Don't want to get too far ahead of myself. But just meeting somebody where they are, it's nice to see them do this and say, like, well, that's what Voyager's crew is doing. They have this technology, but they're trying to get home. And can you see that this is where you are now? It was personal. It was lovely. And by the way, you know, we've so often point out just what a good actor Jerry Ryan is. Obviously, what a good actor Kate Mulgrew is. But there are so many shots in this episode where you've had the scene and the camera just sticks for a few extra seconds on Seven. And you just get to see all the thoughts going through her head. And these moments when Icheb beams away, just like go back to that and just see her deal with it for a second. And it's not over the top. It's not too much, but you just get it. And that is some terrific acting.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
Going back to the location, too, there was one thing about that did not work for me. And it's not the location. The location was great.
Yeah.
When you see it in bright sunlight, that Brunelli prosthetic makeup isn't doing so well.
Little plasticky. Yeah.
Yeah, I am sure everyone was sweating on location, and the makeup department was having to fight that.
Yeah.
But the makeup appliances look like makeup appliances.
Yeah.
And, you know, a few minutes later, you put the same actors wearing the same pieces in a more controlled environment, like the mess hall. They look great.
Yeah.
But on location, maybe they needed hooded cloaks, which if you're going to be working in blazing sunlight for a long time, you want something covering your head, something to shade them and keep those joins from being picked out by the sunlight like they were.
Right. Good point.
Again, this is a real rarity for Star Trek, and so it really stood out. It stands out when it doesn't work as well as Westmore's work usually does.
Yeah.
Now, going back to the transporter room scene, it has been asked more than once on this very show that when any character can walk up and operate the transporter, what is a transporter chief really good for? Okay, this episode tells us, John. Do you know what it is?
Okay. What is it?
They are really good at reading the room.
Oh, they're like the Doors.
Yes, exactly.
They are intention aware. Doors and transporter chiefs.
Yeah, I don't even think we see the transporter chief, but they know not to hit any buttons until Janeway turns around and nods at them. Okay, you're good. I feel like inexperienced transporter chief straight out of Starfleet Academy, they just hit the button, and whoever is staying on the ship turns around and says, "What the hell? You were exchanging a wordless yet meaningful glance. Read the room."
They're in mid-conversation, in mid-emotional moment.
Yes.
Like, no. So you fail, you go back to Transporter Lab, 101 or 102. And that's. Yeah,
because the last thing you want to do after reading someone the riot act is bring them back. They're going to Commander Sonak that person because they're so flustered.
Yeah.
Oh, no, they're forming.
We don't want that. Now, I love, of course, typical of Seven to just summon or barge in on Janeway at some ungodly hours. So calling her to astrometrics at 3 a.m, and of course Janeway's got the big cup of coffee. Perfect. I love it. I love the whole interaction. It also made me think a little bit of the Voyager conspiracy, because here's Seven just putting together all these details and inconsistencies and just going like, okay, there's something wrong here, and I'm going to figure it out. And I wanted Janeway to say, hang on, Did you see the Voyager conspiracy? Because remember, you had too much information and you were just running away with it. And let's settle down here. Let's figure out the truth.
Seven is backed by the data, though, and she is showing her receipts. I mean, she's presenting Janeway with enough evidence to amount to a reasonable doubt.
Yes. Yeah,
which
that is very
any
good
lawyer will tell you that's what you're trying to do.
Yeah. Yeah, but just remember, Seven, she has instant recall of all data. So she could, fit the facts to fit her theory. Oh, since you made a production note earlier and you're talking about that dolly bump on the bridge, I really like the choice. Now, when we go back to the Bernali homeworld and it's just Icheb's parents having this intense discussion before he comes in, we switch to handheld. And that just tells you everything you need to know about heightening the tension and that they're up to something. The dialogue almost becomes secondary at that point because the camera is actually helping you to feel the moment. Really good use there. By the way, it's never a good answer. Here's the dialogue as it was written. Icheb, what is that? And Yifei, if you just relax, it won't hurt. That doesn't answer the question.
It'll hurt less if you don't clench.
Yeah. You're in for a bad time.
Yeah. At this point, I had not seen this since the original broadcast. And that will figure into discussion later, by the way. Mm-hmm. I had not seen this one in a long time, so I had basically forgotten everything but the broadest outline of the plot. I really found myself wishing, oh, please don't let these be his real parents, because that makes it worse.
I thought the same thing. Yes. Mm-hmm.
The fact that Dad is having second thoughts about this, and then Icheb's mom says, oh, no, you were the one who taught me. We've got to make these sacrifices. And it's like, okay, I'm done with you people. I don't like either one of you.
Yeah. I was intrigued. We didn't really go down that path, but I was intrigued by the potential parallel here to Picard making a decision about whether or not to let a pathogen destroy the Borg. So interesting parallel here to a story that we visited in TNG. And I love you pointing out Seven not holding back with just labeling them barbaric. Great moment for her in an episode full of great moments for Seven.
She is so human in this.
Yeah.
And I realize that the phrase so human is very loaded in Star Trek terms.
Yeah. Yeah.
But she is saying things early season 4 you never would have expected to hear come out of her mouth.
Yeah.
And I am glad that she says every bit of it because she needs to, but that kind of dovetails into discussion. Mm-hmm. For all the in-camera stuff that was bothering me earlier, I really love that shot of Voyager warping away from the exploding Borg sphere.
I guess.
I mean, for turn-of-the-century TV budget CGI, that was nicely done.
Yeah, agreed.
Now, a few seconds earlier when the torpedo went off that resulted in that explosion, I kind of had to laugh because Janeway gets up out of her chair to go stand at the railing behind Tom and then promptly gets thrown around the bridge like a rag doll when the ship shakes.
Right.
Whereas Chakotay, who stayed in his chair, is still in his chair. Why did she need to stand there? Do you have to micromanage Tom? No, Mr. Paris, not that button, that other button. No, stay in the chair and stay safe.
It's an episode about family matters, with no Urkel in sight, which is about the only thing that would have made it less serious.
We'll get right back to Child's Play after a word from this week's sponsor, you, our supporters on Patreon.
Hey, you all out there. Do you love Mission Log and want to be part of the conversation?
Yes, well, we would like for you to be a part of the conversation. And good news, your lucky day, you can join our Mission Log Patreon and get access to a whole universe of exclusive perks.
For starters, our private Discord server is where the real fun happens. We've got live chats and deep dive discussions and watch-alongs like...
Oh, yes, like Genealogy After Dark. By the way, Earl and Ashley have been killing it there, and Earl has brought along some special vintage clips, which are a blast. We've got Trekophiles tonight with Dr. Trek himself, Larry Nemeczek. Farscape, Norm. Farscape just took over for Babylon 5, so really looking forward to that. We got Twilight Zone chat. There is international chat. Plus, there is plenty of other Trek talk and wild tangents like, I don't know, Kon-Tiki.
And I want everyone out there to repeat this with me. VAM. That's value.
VAM.
VAM.
Yes.
That's value-added material, because if you like behind-the-scenes content like VAM, you also get early access to special episodes and exclusive giveaways. Yep, we got those too.
Got a little bit of everything. And the best part, you can join us for as little as $1 a month. Just $1.
I'd buy that for $1. $1. That's less the cost of a rack the Genuit Quarks. Unless, of course, he swindles you for at least $2.
Well, that's very true. Yeah. So beam up. Join us at patreon.com/missionlog. Again, that is patreon.com/missionlog.
And we'll see you in the Discord.
I feel like the bulk of this conversation necessarily is about Seven and Janeway and about the ethical decisions that they are faced with. But one of those decisions that I alluded to in the last segment, I was thinking about Borg. And I was thinking about the parallel to Picard having this option on the table where he could just disable / destroy / commit genocide on the entirety of the Borg threat once and for all. And as I have said recently on Mission Log, I definitely don't want to relitigate that because I don't want to relitigate the relative merits of genocide when faced with a powerful enemy. So let's look at this now from the angle of the Brunali, Icheb's parents. They are using the only tools that they have now to try to protect themselves. And they have turned that thing, which is, well, it's not just about protection, it's about, outright using a weapon against the thing that threatens them. And not just them, but the entirety of their civilization. All it takes is for, one cube to show up and they are gone if they are considered to be a threat. Janeway has had some interesting options presented to her in the past, given species 8472 and her ability to take out or at least put a stop to the Borg. Whether or not she knew about Picard's option in Borg, not really sure. But I'm curious here if you have any thoughts about Janeway's role to judge what they are up to. Because Picard took that option very seriously and was ready to do it. And I'm sure that there are plenty of other people on the Enterprise who might have been ready to do it. Here's Janeway faced with a kind of trolley problem. If she doesn't lift a finger, if she doesn't insert herself into this, then that problem will take care of itself because these people are going to carry out what they want to do. And even with Icheb safely on Voyager at the end, and with the Brunali left to their own devices, who's to say that they won't try it yet again? We didn't have a lesson here about genocide and biological warfare. What we had was saving the one person that we need to save and getting out of there. And who knows what happens next?
I have questions. I don't have lessons. I've got questions.
Okay.
How many times have they done this before? Have they bred a whole succession of children to sacrifice to the Borg to do this?
I would not be surprised because they are scientists. They're doing things based on the principle of experimentation until you get to the desired result. And it might not have been these two. It might not have been Lucan and Yifei, but it could have been another couple and another and another and another. This could have been a very long time coming that they realized we don't have weapons, we don't have ships, but what we have is our expertise with genetic engineering.
Yeah, and that's deeply disturbing.
Yeah.
Because, you're talking about the time frame of scientific endeavor, of experimentation. How many kids did they give up before they, quote-unquote, got it right, if you can even call it doing what they're doing right? Before they achieve the desired result, really, is the better way to phrase it.
How old do we think that Icheb is? Because I feel like in real time, you're going to have an actor who is over 18 because that makes things a lot easier on set to have somebody who can be there the full day. But I feel like they play the character, they refer to the character as somebody who is under 18. But even then, if you're talking about somebody who's 16, 17 years old, you're talking about a decade and a half, 2 decades, maybe more of this kind of experimentation to get to that point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really disturbing. I'm also a little bit disturbed by, do we not want to try to establish? The Brunali obviously have ships because they were ready to give one up to send Icheb back for a full refund.
Yeah.
If they have ships, can we not kind of colonial fleet this thing and get them away from that planet?
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I think Seven has a very valid point there. And
that they need to move?
Yes. They're in a bad neighborhood.
Yeah. Yeah. But even with that, I mean, look how hard historically it's been to get people to move, even if they're in a bad neighborhood, even if they're into danger. When we show up, they're not threatened in the respect that they don't have valuable technology. They don't have resources that the Borg want right away. Now, granted, that could change. Something could happen, of course, but they're living this relatively comfortable, okay, we have this agrarian society. Yes, we have technology, but we're not flaunting our technology. We're not lighting up the neon sign, as you said. So in theory, they could be safe a little bit, but that safety is still predicated on constantly trying to stay a step ahead of the Borg, as opposed to just being somewhere that they wouldn't have that as the overriding factor in every decision that they make all the time about how much technology they use, what they use it for, and are we turning our kids into bioweapons?
Yeah, and it's that last question that just really bugs me about this. If that is the choice, you can move and stop turning your children into weapons, or you can stay put and just sacrifice, untold future generations?
Yeah.
That's fine by someone? It seems to me like it's not a choice.
Yeah.
But as you put it, people set down roots and it becomes part of their identity. And they are unwavering in that, like, this is our home, this is where we're staying, this is what we're fighting for.
Yeah.
And it's really easy for an outsider, like Janeway or Seven, to beam down into a crater and look around and say, why would you want to stay here?
Yeah, because it's our crater.
Yeah, it's our crater. It's a rather nice crater. You should see some of the other craters around here.
The other big complicating factor here is, what if they had shown up and instead of being genetic scientists, because this is partly a technology that they have perfected in order to survive, in order to grow food that they can eat, right? But what if we showed up and they were just a bunch of computer hackers? And instead of creating a biological weapon inside a person with an identity and agency and, hopes and dreams himself, all right, what if it was just like, yeah, we're just going to come up with a thing that we can put on a ship, and it is a computer program, but it will also genocide the Borg? Do we still have as much of a problem with that? Do we still say, oh, no, you can't do that because what you're doing is committing genocide? Like, how much are we separating the goal here from the method?
I have a hard time looking past the method.
Yeah.
But then I am a parent, and so that's kind of how I look at it. You don't hurt your children. You just don't do it. And yet I understand because they establish it so strongly in dialogue. This is the only means they have been left with. I guess what I need to see is more of that scene like we have between Lucan and Ife, where someone, somewhere, on the Brunali side of things is wrestling with this. Like, it would be great if we could stop doing this.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about Seven's journey a bit here, and let's talk about the protection of the child, because that's really what it comes down to, clearly. And, I've said it before the last few episodes, like there is something really tricky but really great about having great guest stars that drive home a story, but they are there in service of our primary actors. And they really are there to help drive this continuing story about Seven and her humanity. And now this aspect of Seven that we started a couple of weeks ago, where she starts to play mother to these Borg kids. But I think what's so interesting about that, it's not just this maternal feeling. It is also that these kids parallel her own traumatic experience in this very specific, very profound way. So that is an interesting bond to explore right away. And coupled with the idea that Seven is emotionally stunted herself. Like, we have driven home how many times that she was like 6, 7, 8 years old when she was assimilated, and that is fully an adult by the time she is broken free from the collective. So there's a whole other set of kind of emotional and maturity questions around Seven. There is also just the time and effort that she has already invested in them. They are her new project. They are her new mission. And she does not accept change very well. She does, as much as she says adapt, she does not always adapt to suddenly changing course. And Janeway is just sort of saying to her, like, okay, well, you need to change your emotional response. Like, I get it. You're emotional about this, and that's understandable. And thank you for being honest about your emotional response to this. But you're just going to have to get past that, because here's what we have to do. There is a lot being forced on Seven here. And I'm curious your take on her being in the role of the mother here to these kids versus Janeway being in this sort of maternal role to Seven, and what the obligations are to these kids, to these parents we just met, to Icheb's desires.
Well, there is a kind of another wild card in here, which is bringing up Annika's parents.
Yeah.
And the fact that Seven has decided, okay, my parents took me into harm's way, and look what happened.
Mm-hmm.
That was on them.
Yeah.
There was nothing she could do in that situation. The fact that she has done enough self-reflection to arrive at that decision, I feel like you cannot write off Seven's attachment or her emotional involvement here, because that takes an extraordinary amount of emotional maturity to kind of reach that place, especially with a parent that you lost a long time ago and will never see again and can never litigate this with again.
Yeah. By the way, not to be that guy, but she did see her father. She saw Magnus. Yeah. I'm surprised that they didn't mention that. I mean, I guess you could hand wave it away and say that she didn't see her father. She saw the drone
that he became.
Replaced her father. Yeah.
Well, it's sort of like Icheb asking a doctor, what would you think if you had to go live among different people all of a sudden for a long time? And doctor's like, well, let me tell you about this planet we visited just a few weeks before you were on board, and I had to go sing a lot. It's like, no, the doctor is uniquely qualified to answer that question.
Yeah.
And I think Seven is uniquely qualified to be an advocate for these kids.
Yeah. I think that the only thing I 100% agree with that statement. I think the only thing that sort of gets in the way or is a complicating factor is really just one of time, because they've literally been there for like 2 weeks. And that doesn't mean that the harm and the danger that is present and very much a reality for Icheb at this point doesn't negate that at all. It's just that we have had to compress this level of bonding and mature emotional response into this very short time. I kind of felt, we go from 7 2 weeks ago basically saying, like, I don't want to take care of them. They're just going to get in my way,
But in many cases, and there are many examples of this, Seven is, as a character, the way she is written, her behavior and her dialogue, she is coded as non-neurotypical.
Yes.
Non-neurotypical routine becomes your friend. A set pattern becomes your friend, because it becomes what is called a regulating activity. This is going to happen at this time. Once you're used to it, to suddenly have it ripped away again, even if it's only been a couple of weeks, can be traumatic. And so I feel that this is actually really one of the biggest examples of Seven coded as a non-neurotypical character.
If we were to fault Seven with anything, okay, maybe she isn't able to maintain the professional decorum that Janeway would prefer. We have that scene in the conference room where she is, I love it, she is so biting toward these parents. And then this is keeping her up all night to try to connect the dots. And then she is, she's unable to hold her peace any longer. She's going to fix this. I think Seven she is fully allowed to have those feelings. She is fully allowed to feel that protective over Icheb, given all of these layers that we are painting on her about what kind of connection she has to their experience. I guess the only thing we can say is, all right, that I was questioning at the beginning. I think the episode very cleverly makes you question this. Is she being a little paranoid? Is she being a little too selfish here? Does she need to listen to Janeway a little more and just learn a hard lesson? What do you make of that? Or is it really just, again, to service the story?
I think part of it is to service the story, but I think we are seeing how seriously Seven is taking her role as caretaker of these kids. She has an opportunity here to pay it forward. What Janeway has done for her, she can do for them. She can pay it forward. She sees that clearly as a serious obligation.
Yeah.
Is there a little bit of irrationality in here with her pride about Icheb's accomplishments and the fact that he could be doing all of this great work in astrophysics? Sure. Mm-hmm. And Seven makes it very clear at more than one point in this episode, yes, she is emotionally compromised by this whole thing.
Yeah, great scene and great just short admission from her. Really like that.
But she is still showing her work. Mm-hmm. She is showing the whole equation as to why this does not add up, and we need to double back and do the due diligence that we perhaps failed to do the first time. Because I don't think Icheb's parents expected to see him again. I think they got this message from the passing ship, through the speakers.
Yeah.
Do you know where your children are? And it's like, oh, we could do the terrible thing again. It'll be twice as fun this time. They didn't expect to see him again. They weren't looking.
Yeah.
They thought the thing had happened, and it took, and no problem.
Yeah. And then we'd never see the Borg again.
Which is ridiculous because, really, at most, they trashed one cube.
Yeah.
Just like they're about to sacrifice Icheb again to trash one sphere.
Yeah.
Which is really the thing that raises the question of how many kids have you thrown out there as ammunition?
That's disturbing.
because they're only all they can do is splat one of these kids on a cube at a time, and that takes out that one cube. That is not a long-term strategy.
Yeah.
I'm going to do the thing I do on genealogy a lot,
Okay.
which is home in on a single line or maybe a couple of lines where the script is telling you what the script is about. And, then as I am wont to do, perhaps to everyone's chagrin, I drop in a personal story that says, okay, this is why this hit me so hard.
Yeah.
Okay, this line, anyone who values their own goals over the safety of their children is irresponsible. Yeah, I'm hip.
Yeah.
That exchange between Seven and Janeway in the ready room, that to me, I don't know about you, that's the heart of the story. That is the script telling you what the script is about. What do you think?
Yeah. That's hard to deny, and I love it when Star Trek can do a thing like that and just have one sentence right in the middle of the show that says, here's where you hang your hat.
Yeah, because it's on the surface. It's about Icheb's parents are trying to use him to smallpox blanket the Borg.
Yeah.
One ship at a time. But that's not what the show is really about. So here's why I have great big feelings about this. My mom passed away when I was 14, and my dad, quite obviously, obvious reasons there, went into a tailspin. He started drinking heavily. He found himself in the company of a woman who had a job requiring a lot of travel around the country. She didn't care for me one bit, but what she did do was ask my dad to come with her when she was working at various places and just leave me at home. He really had no interest in being a single parent. He hadn't really done a lot of the parenting, and it wasn't what he signed up for, so off he went. The bills were paid. There's food in the fridge. There's food in the freezer.
Yeah.
I spent the better part of 3 years of high school living by myself in a 2-story house with no adult supervision. No other people, really. It was on me to walk to school, catch a ride with whoever I could, keep up with my schoolwork, stay out of trouble, and not tell anybody what was going on. And I'd get my report cards and I'd forge his signature and send them back. Oh, yeah, he signed them. Sorry he couldn't make the parent-teacher conference. He's so busy. And I kept going to school because what I said earlier about Seven being coded as non-neurotypical, if you are even slightly on the spectrum, even if you're on the high-functioning end, which I'd like to maintain the illusion that I am, routine and structure are your friends. And so I think on some level I knew I would find that at school, but I would not find it staying at home.
Yeah.
And, also not showing up for school or doing really badly at school, that would draw too much scrutiny.
Yeah.
But I think about that relative to this line now. He was putting his goals way above my safety, because you think about that situation. And I can't say that I never did anything stupid with that amount of freedom, but I kept it down to a dull roar.
Yeah.
But thinking back, that could have gone very badly. I mean, that could have gone, life-changingly or life-endingly badly in just the wrong set of circumstances. He was putting his goals, and we're not even talking like big goals, we're not even talking save the species. No, he was getting drunk and getting laid.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm hip. That's very irresponsible. And that line hit me like a sack of cloned potatoes. Big feels about this one. Seven is not just talking about it. I mean, she is talking about it a lot. Sometimes Janeway kind of wishes she would cool her engines. But unlike everyone else in the room, until Seven rousts them into action, she's doing something about it. She is not letting it rest. She is prodding Janeway until Janeway takes action. She is standing up for Icheb at a moment when Icheb cannot do it for himself. And so we need more Sevens in the world.
The prodigal son returns. The prodigal son almost gets assimilated again. Let's see what our hosts assimilated from this episode. All
right, so we have arrived at the end of Child's Play, which is where we get to ask ourselves a couple of the key wrap-up questions. Did the episode hold up? And what did we learn? What are the morals, meanings, messages? And before I ask you that, Earl, first of all, if the episode holds up or not, I think I know what the answer is here. But I just want to thank you for sharing what you did in the last segment. You know, it's always interesting to me, whether it's Norm or one of our guests who has filled in, to hear a personal connection to an episode. And thanks for sharing that with me. Thanks for sharing that with our audience. Really appreciate it, man.
Happy to, because, it still informs everything to this day, such as me raising my own 2 kids. Sometimes our parents are there to serve as a cautionary tale. I firmly believe that, unfortunately.
Yeah. Speaking of Yifei and Lucan, Child's Play, does the episode hold up?
Well, the story is an evergreen, and I was kind of surprised how much this one affected me when I didn't really remember it that well. Yeah, I'll get to the messages in a moment, but I really did like this one. It packed an emotional wallop that I just wasn't expecting in the back half of season 6.
Yeah.
When these kids were introduced, it was a lot of, and I agree with what you guys said when you were covering Collective, that it was a lot of technobabble and not enough what is the full emotional import of this happening, of these children being here. So does the story hold up? Yes. Does it hit you like a sack of clone space potatoes? Absolutely. On the production end, there is some spectacular stuff, like those location and matte painting shots, and that little bit of CGI that had to be handmade for this episode. There's also a weirdly outsized amount of stuff that I'm surprised got past the dailies here.
Right.
And
that is strange, right?
It sticks out precisely because at this point, it was absolutely normal for Voyager to be exceptional in its production values, putting every dime on the screen. And so when something clumsy like that slips through, it's all the more surprising and noticeable. So does it hold up on that end? Some of it.
Right.
I love that we were already following up on the Borg kids, because it's like the writers knew they couldn't just introduce these characters and then disappear them into the background of the ship's population like they have done far too many times on this show. Like I said earlier, we never see Samantha Wildman anymore. What happened to those people that Chakotay punched and then sent jogging with Tuvok? Have we ever seen those people again?
Right.
Very memorable, but again, it's happened far too many times. I'm glad that someone in the writer's room clocked that there's more than one story to tell with these characters. Now, yes, we will have to engage the services of child actors again, but it feels kind of like an early prototype for these 2 and 3 episode mini arcs that start happening really late in Enterprise, which is, I always thought that was a very nice, elegant middle ground between the network wants us to stay randomly episodic and, oh, hey, DS9 and that other space station show have really shown that serialization works wonders.
I have to agree with you. I mean, they seem to have figured out, finally, after all of these false starts where you have a character that's going to stick around for a little while. They're going to go, Seska, geez, and they're played too arch, or they're played in a way where it's just about plot, and not about the emotional value to our other primary characters. And here it seems like they've figured out the balance. And here's something that is a positive addition to the show that also serves our main characters. So it does a good job of that, driving the story about the kids, adds backstory, adds nuance, but then really makes 7 of 9 shine. There's mystery here, but then it comes down to these important questions about a person's autonomy and the rights, over that person. That's just such a strange idea, but you have all of these adults battling over, who gets to take this kid and why, which is a very interesting drama to see played out. Tip of the hat to the guest stars. again, the location sequences that are great. I think if you were to just completely pull this out of context, I don't know if it's the greatest episode of Star Trek ever. Like, is it, the prototypical episode that you can show to somebody, this is what Star Trek is all about? Maybe not. But I think what's important here is the context of where Voyager is right now and what we've done to really buckle down on having some long-form character arcs that matter, not just for the guest stars, but like I said, with Seven, and seeing these changes in her from week to week to week, just even the subtle ones are so satisfying. And as you said before, so human. So it just works very well. And that brings us to morals, meanings, messages. And I feel like you're going to have more to say on this than I will. So I'll just quickly say that, I think we have these interesting questions about how is 7 of 9 behaving here? Is she being out of line? Is she too emotionally compromised? And I love her admission about that to Janeway. I like Janeway's position in this. Is Janeway just being too trusting? Or even if trusting isn't the right word, is she just ready to do what she thinks is right based on limited information? Yep, we're here. We got the kid home. We're done. See ya. We have to get back home ourselves. So I like seeing the two positions played, not as one being wholly right and one as being wholly wrong, but both of them with something to contribute to this complicated situation. So then I ask myself about their position. Do they have an obligation to go back? Could they, where are they with Icheb? And how much of an obligation do they have to keep trying this with his parents? Obviously, the truth is revealed, and we realize, no, not much obligation anymore at all. Do they have an obligation to interfere with these people and what they are doing to protect themselves? It is a wholly gruesome plan that the Bernali have. And as I posed before, this question, when Voyager is out of sight, who's going to be next in line to try to do this again? Because those people exist on this planet, and they will continue to be faced with this problem. So I don't know if there's a bonk on the head message about that, but I love that we are in this ethically gray area here. But most important here, when I look at the finale of it all, I want to quote a great podcaster from his very own recap of this episode. And he said something great in Act 5 there. He, meaning Icheb, is not obliged to forgive them, his parents, for what they did. And that is a really difficult lesson to swallow for a lot of people. But I think it is, again, absolutely crucial to understanding this episode and understanding Icheb's journey and the importance about, if you want to use sort of therapy speak here, establishing that boundary. The boundary has been drawn for him, but now it is up to Icheb to move on and realize that he does not need to feel forgiveness about getting away from there and not wanting to be back there, and rather staying in the safety and relative protection of Voyager.
We landed in very, very similar spaces here. Now, one message that was not perhaps put in these words in the script that I definitely take away from this: stand up for the young. Stand up for the vulnerable. Do not back down. Be their advocate when they need an advocate. I know we try really hard not to timestamp mission log, but let me say that from where I am sitting in the United States in early 2025, the vulnerable are only becoming more vulnerable. Their need for people to advocate for them is only increasing. People who, perhaps for whatever silly reason, be it their gender, their skin color, or the social currency that they have to burn, have more privilege and visibility than the vulnerable do. You need to speak up. If you have that privilege, use that privilege as a platform. Be like 7 of 9 here. She has the captain's ear, and she has major and legitimate concerns about Icheb's safety. The important thing is she also brings the receipts. She is not going off half-cocked based on the 24th century equivalent of somebody's shared social media post, because this is something that has been a bugbear in the modern day of wild rumors and disinformation starting up. Oh, we have to do this and put this legislation in effect to protect the children. You do want to protect the children, don't you? What kind of barbarian would not want to protect the children? It is such a dishonest debating tactic. Oh, why wouldn't you want to do this? No, the question is still, why do you? What is your proof that someone going to a specific bathroom is harming anyone? Advocate for those who have no voice or a diminished voice and help those who need help. Speak up when you see they're being hurt or abandoned. Don't let it go. Be like 7 of 9, because when your chips are down, who's left to speak for you? But in the end, 7 is right. Forgiveness is not owed to someone who has done harm. Sometimes the monsters are just monsters. Resentment and holding active grudges are not healthy behavior, but maintaining those boundaries that you brought up is not only healthy, but very necessary.
Mission Log is produced by Roddenberry Entertainment. If you'd like to support us directly, you can do so at patreon.com/missionlog for early access to shows and the Mission Log Discord. Our website is missionlogpodcast.com, and for more Star Trek news and discussion, visit trekmovie.com.
On the next Mission Log, Good Shepherd.
Some of the music for Mission Log provided by Warp 11, online at warp11.com. Special thanks to consulting producers, Matt Esposito, Homer Frizzell, Chris Garris, Rand Hurl, Tom Kozak, Julie Miller, Mike Richards, Mike Shabel, Paul Shadwell, and David Takachi. Whoever bought the cloned potato props hopefully didn't spend blood money, but they definitely spent spud money. End transmission.
This is a Roddenberry podcast. For more great podcasts, visit podcast.roddenberry.com.